Hello. Welcome back to the second recap. Oh my goodness.
Tsumihoroboshi, yeah, we're here.
We spent a lot of time in the first recap talking basically just about like
The
very last end of the story.
Yeah,
And whatever. That's what was on my mind. That's the thing that bothered me the most. But yeah, editing Tsumihoroboshi has been one of the most interesting editing experiences the whole time through, in a very different way to why I found Miyakashi so interesting to edit.
I was going to say, because with Miyakashi, you kind of found yourself liking it more and more and like understanding more and more. Have you had a similar sort of experience with Tsumihoroboshi or?
No, I actually like Tsumihoroboshi. I really enjoyed getting to hear your side of the story again while I wasn't trying to also perform alongside it.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And also, like, I think that the strongest points have been some of the strongest parts in the entire series.
Yeah.
But some of the weaker points have been some of the most bored that I've been in editing this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, you have issue with the final scene, which again we won't spend too much time on, but you felt like that could have been more hype for like the emotional climax of the series that effectively is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to talk about the next couple of chapters too much, but like this is the payoff for me. The finale of Tsumihoroboshi is like the moment in Higurashi that I figured everything out and my life changed. So like this is the pinnacle. It's only downhill from here, guys.
I mean, the thing is, I do still enjoy that last chapter. I just think that it could be better without actually having to cut anything. But we've spoken about that at length.
We won't go on about that.
Yeah, my opinion hasn't really changed, I don't think.
That's fine.
But I think the main thing that really kind of stood out to me this arc, as I said, was like getting to hear your side of the story again. Because obviously this whole way through, and with a lot of the stories that we cover, there's a lot that I struggle or am completely unable to connect with.
Yeah.
Where you are in such a visceral way.
Yes.
And, we obviously had that, the episode in Arc 6 where it was basically half an hour of you just talking about your feelings.
About everything. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even done. I still got more stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have together watched my play, which was, I mean, look, I had my hoodie down the entire time.
This man's been hyping this play up. This man's been hyping this play up since we started Umineko.
Oh my God. It's so like, it's embarrassing, but at the same time, it's kind of awesome to see the moments where I can tell like, this is what I'm feeling is like really visceral. The moment when the lights come up when they're not supposed to, and they played the music wrong at the start, and like, I'm just imagining all the thoughts running through my head. It's like I'm living the moment again. It's fantastic. But yeah, like, as you say, this entire arc is like, summarizing my fears of like abandonment and like not being able to trust myself, all that fun stuff, all that good paranoia stuff that we're wrapping up for Mark 1. And yeah, like it's had a really tangible effect on my life, which I don't think that any other piece of media has done. Umineko was like a great time, and it's opened up, like it's like that changed my life in terms of like meeting up with you and doing the videos and that sort of thing, but like it didn't fundamentally change the way that I thought about myself. You know? I mean, I promised at some point I'd talk about not just how like I've been a shitty friend, but how like I've had relationships with shitty friends, and that definitely also plays into it. I don't want to go like too on blast of the terrible, awful people I've been friends with, but like there was one guy who has had a really, like, I would say a pretty negative effect on my life. He has his own sort of traumas and pains and all that stuff, so I'm not entirely unsympathetic, but basically, there's this guy who like I hang out at church with, and that was fine, but when we got to school, he'd be like, we can't be friends at school because you're like not cool enough to be friends at school. We can only be friends when no one else can see us be friends.
That sounds like the kind of thing that is like made up for TV shows that I wouldn't expect to actually exist.
Entirely real.
Yeah.
Entirely real. This guy was like, he was an angry, violent person, and he was anti-authoritarian. He was a total mess, but like he really kind of was the worst. He was actually the worst. Just like, yeah, we can only be friends when no one else is looking. Anyway.
It's kind of interesting because like, obviously I don't know the perspective that kind of comes from, but the idea that is, I guess, kind of an extreme-ish case of people, taking their private selves and public selves to be very different things.
Sure.
Like, I think a lot of people, there's always this whole thing of like, be yourself, because that's like, the best version of you, or the most true version of yourself.
Sure.
But as we've spoken about several times on the show, everyone has, you know, different personas. One of the things that I noticed watching your play is that, like, one of the reasons we can't play like social deduction games together very easily is because we both know each other's acting voice so well.
Well, you was I was going to say, you literally called me out on that last time we played. I still won, mind you, on that particular like choice because I knew the game very well. I've been playing a lot of Secret Hitler. But that's the only way that I can beat you. I can't beat you in social deduction games that you already understand how to play.
Yeah.
I had to beat you mechanically rather than through my like acting.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like, we know each other so well at this point that it is near impossible to do.
But kind of one of the funny things that I think people have seen more of you than of me on the show is that I tend to all the time have my like acting self on.
Sure.
It's only like really quiet moments that I switch off to some extent. And, you know, not to say that you haven't seen that, because you definitely have, like, heaps. But I think that, you know, we've got to see more of your vulnerable side on this show dealing with these things.
Look, that's what I'm here for.
And it was just so fantastic to me getting to see, like, you, what was that? Like, how long ago was that now? That was six years ago.
As of today.
Yeah.
It was high school. It was my final performance that I got rubbish marks on because it wasn't about the performance, because the IB is awful and you shouldn't do it. That was literally my drama. So here's the thing. The first thing my drama teacher said, well, the first thing was fantastic job. The second thing was they went up to my parents and was like, I would love to give your son full marks, but we are not grading you based on your performance because it's the IB and you have to do a research paper now.
Yep.
And I just flopped it completely. So that performance that was like fantastic and everyone loved it and all that sort of thing, which then I'm perfect. I still just got rubbish marks.
My high school arts was pretty well the same.
Yeah.
Fantastic presentation, but the paperwork was
rubbish. Yeah. It's awful.
I think it was also for me that like my whole thing was on like the art of vanitas and like, you know, the impending death and vanity and all of that sort of stuff, stemming off like Dutch art. But the whole thing was I kind of did it like sarcastically because I'm like, these are all really cool concepts. I love engaging with them, but it's also like, this is the edgiest fucking thing ever, and I cannot take it like 100% seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
So like some of the paper that I had written up for it was just like, it just feels like I'm making fun of the marker. I just have to scrap this.
Just throw it out. Yeah, I mean, this play, like, looking back on it, and especially looking at the questionnaire afterwards, which Felix hasn't seen, but I've watched relatively recently. I really struggle to like answer questions about the play and also to write up about it afterwards. But really, like, what it was at the end of the day, it was a way for me to express myself in a way that I hadn't really been able to before. Because I spend most of the play, I might upload the play. I think that might be a thing. Like, it's on YouTube, but like unlist it and like link it in a comment or a description below. I'll decide on that before this goes live. Cut this otherwise.
That's not a lot of time.
You know, it's fine. One of the things that I kind of noticed is that I don't really know what I'm talking about in the video when I'm trying to explain everything. I tend to get really sidetracked by things that now I don't really care about. But I can tell that there are certain points to play where I'm just shouting at Renna because I'm playing Keiichi. I'm just shouting at Renna that like she's awful and she wasn't my friend, all that sort of stuff. Like, I can feel my like frustration, anger at my shitty friends.
Yeah.
In those moments, just like, you're out to get me and nothing that you say is real. And like, it's why I say, you know, I relate to Keiichi so hard in Onikakushi, because that's like his entire struggle is that he doesn't feel like he can trust anybody, even the people that are supposed to be his friends. And for me, like, that was real. Like, that was a real thing. Like, I had really terrible people to like hang out with.
Yeah.
And so seeing in Tsumihoroboshi, seeing that idea kind of redeemed, that you can have friends that you think are shitty, but that are actually good, if that makes sense. Like, that is such an eye-opener for me, seeing that, you know, you're not stuck with people that are terrible and that, I don't know, because like, it's hard to explain, because like, that perspective that friends can be shitty and that you should throw them away if they do anything horrible to you, like, that in itself is like a very extreme viewpoint. So you need to kind of, I don't know, like, I'm trying to like explain it, but like, my viewpoint
I think it goes back to the whole thing of like perspective, right? Where, you know, if someone is giving you shit and you don't have the perspective to understand why they're at a point in their life where they're doing that, you know, it can feel like the best thing to do is to toss them away. But, you know, to some extent, they also might need sympathy. And that's very much what this arc goes into here, is that, like, you know, Renna is trying to be there and be the absolute best for her friends. And that's, you know, often to her own detriment in some ways. And then we see her not getting sympathy from her friends in other ways that this arc then recontextualizes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that the best way to kind of put it for me is that knowing that I had a friend who was like taking advantage of me and, you know, being a physically violent friend and thinking that's okay and all that sort of thing. After realizing that that wasn't okay, I took that to a very extreme place where, like, if anyone so much as like touched me on the shoulder, I'd be like, oh, is this that shitty friend all over again? But now I'm in a place where like I can look on case by case basis and like understand people a lot more clearly, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know, like it's a very personal thing, and obviously people have like very different ways that we react to the people around us, and the perspective that it takes for you to kind of come to understand your own actions is kind of mind-boggling to some extent, because I think I've never reached a point where I've been like, oh, this is why everything I've done has happened. It's a constant state of reflection. And that's why I think stories like Tsumihoroboshi are so fantastic for people like you, because they explore, you know, some of the underlying things in ways that you wouldn't have expected.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, that's what Tsumihoroboshi did for me. It made me like turn the mirror back on myself, understand like why I do bad things, why the people around me do bad things, that doing one bad thing is okay and that you can come back from that. Like, I mean, this is all stuff we talk about in the playthrough, but like that's it. That's what Tsumihoroboshi is. That's what Renner's like arc is. It's asking for forgiveness when you do something wrong, even something like really terrible, or that more importantly feels like it's truly terrible. You know, like you might, I don't know, steal some chips out of the cupboard and your parents are like, why'd you take those chips? They were for the family get together. And you're like, I don't fucking know. And then you don't want to go to the get together and steal your friends because like I took the chips. But like that's a totally unreasonable reaction to have. You say, I'm sorry, and you buy some new chips, right? Like it's not the end of the world if you just like take a bag of chips out of the cupboard, you know?
Tell you what though, speaking of unreasonable reactions, I had a very strange experience early this arc where I don't even necessarily know if it was like a thing that pushed me to this point, but reading a lot of the comments in the early part of the series, and you might notice some of the videos earlier in Arc 6 don't have like much of a response from me at all. I'd start writing comments and it'd feel like I was just kind of going at the people that I was responding to.
Fighting them.
Like it wasn't even like it was particularly argumentative. I'd just be like, yeah, your opinion's right, but
look, you've picked up the mega spirit. You've realized that fighting people on the internet is the way to go. That's how we be.
And it was really interesting because, like, I don't think that there was a lot that people were saying in the comments that I disagreed with, or there was much that I wanted to actually like take them to task on. But I think, I don't know, I had like a personal barrier, particularly after editing some of the early episodes of this arc, where like I'd be thinking about it and just be like frustrated, like, oh, well, you know, this thing that didn't really work for me, and I didn't like the way that line was done, and I felt like I was maybe. I didn't end up doing it, but I felt like I was starting to like take it out on the comments, my like frustrations with the story.
That's all right. I mean, look, it happens every now and then. Sometimes you got to fight someone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I hope that you've enjoyed Tsumihoroboshi, at least on the whole. It's still my favorite arc, even if the ending was like a little bit weird. Anyway, I don't know. Like I've generally been diving in the comments for the more serious kind of discussions, I suppose. Especially on that video where I just like splurged everything. Because that's kind of what I'm trying to focus on. You know, that's what I'm trying to focus on in the playthrough, and especially for Sumi. My kind of mental health stuff and doctor stuff and all that kind of crazy shit.
Yeah, and I mean, thank you to all of you who reached out both in the comments and in DMs to us about that video, because it was really fantastic getting to, you know, hear your thoughts on it, particularly for something that was so significant.
Straight up, I had someone like DM me and be like, it's fantastic that I have a moment in my like busy day, like stressful day, to just like listen to you talk about your troubles, and I felt like I really connected with you. And I was like, you have made my year. Because this is the dream, right? Like I say that, you know, some of my personality of like being kind of a goof is like a lot of influenced by Keiichi. Keiichi's probably the big one. But also like a bunch of YouTubers, like Jesse Cox is a big one. Like there's all sorts of people on the internets who I've always aspired. Like if I could be like that Cox guy who just like goes on the internet and makes people happy, just like does Dumb Goose for an hour, and people are like, yeah, that's awesome. You've made my day better. Then that's the highest praise I could possibly receive. I feel like I've made some kind of difference.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things for me this arc about like getting to sit down and listen to, all of the personal stuff from you is that, as I was saying, it was a very different experience kind of performing it, quote unquote, alongside you as opposed to just getting to listen to it. And it got me thinking about an interview we did earlier in the year for Death of the Reader. Where we were talking about Pierre Bayard's Death of the Reader.
Sure. The radio show Death of the Reader that Pierre Bayard made.
So basically, it's Pierre Bayard's How to Talk About Books You Haven't Read, and it was Jack Abacus's Death of the Reader. That's right.
You're right. It was he who wrote the.
And it was basically like the whole idea of how to talk about books you haven't read, because I'm here on the show improvising along with you about things that I haven't read.
No context for. Yeah.
And it's so weird, like, having to be in the position that book expresses, because the whole argument that the book makes is that because there is such an enormous volume of material in any one field, it is better to write in that field than read in it.
Sure.
So and that's basically what I was doing, right? Is that I was writing and expressing my opinions in a field that I have
no context for.
Absolutely no basis for.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was kind of peculiar to put that into practice after having thought about it like on an academic level for so long.
Sure.
Like I'm curious how those opinions and the things that I said came across to you, because I definitely found while I was editing that like a lot of the things that I'd say, it's not that I necessarily would like go, that's a bad point. I'd just be like, did that really need to be said?
Yeah. I definitely felt that when I was chatting with you, because when I came into a couple of those discussions, I had like notes and I had thought about things to say beforehand. Like, I used to, when we were doing Maneko, I used to practice voices in the shower. Now it's practicing rants in the shower. So I've already got like some of the phrases that I want to say. Not like I haven't got to like script it out of my head, but I've got like, these are some of the topics I want to reach. These are the ways that I express those things. I definitely think that I'm putting you in the hot seat when I like just start being like, and then this is when the abuse happened. And like, oh God, like how do you even respond to that when this is going to be, broadcast to people? It's gonna be on record. What is your response to like friend abuse, whatever the fuck it is?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like there are definitely some points. I remember in the big rant, there were a couple points where I was like, I don't know why you're saying that. I'm just gonna keep going. You could probably pin those down. Like if you know me well, I'd be able to tell the points where I'm just like,
I can already tell some today in this recording right now that you've had that reaction to.
Oh, I don't think it's been quite as visceral as that.
It hasn't been as visceral, but like they're still there. But I think to some extent that there's still kind of a value in it because, there is a large number of people who are uninformed about these issues. And, if you don't get to experience how they're misinformed, it's very hard to correct the misinformation.
Sure.
So like, there's a lot of things that I've gone back over in editing this where I've been like, as I said, why did that need to be said? And it's moments to reflect and go like, okay, well, clearly this is something I'm misunderstanding.
That's fine.
I'm misrepresenting it. And, obviously I think that people feel bad about presenting a misinformed opinion because, if it's misinformed and taken as gospel, that's hugely problematic.
Yep.
But I have enjoyed the process, this arc, of getting to actively correct that by, making the mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be really, I think, interesting going forward. Especially, I think one of the comments that you made that's still stuck in my head was when you said that Tsumihoroboshi was the mental health arc, which I thought was interesting because for me, the whole of Higurashi is the mental health arc.
That was more of just a gag, that one in particular,
fair enough. But yeah, that was just one of those comments that's like, whether it's a gag, whether it's silliness or whatever, like that was definitely one of those comments. I was like, well, actually, like Hanamizawa syndrome, people acting irrationally and doing weird shit that we can't understand, even though we know them very well. Like maybe there's some mental health commentary going on there. And like
next thing you're going to tell me that Keiichi wasn't in a healthy mental situation in Arc 1, Ben.
Are you telling me that none of the characters have neurotypical ways of thinking about things?
Now, you're taking this too far, Ben. Too far.
Yeah, no. It's right. Like, at the end of the day, I trust you enough to talk about this shit.
Yeah.
And especially to throw you in the deep end without, like, properly informing you.
Which is, I have to admit, is kind of scary.
I know. The whole thing is, it's scary for everyone. Everyone's just scared on this show. But no, like, it's been great to, like, get all this out there. And I couldn't imagine, like, a better way to do it than, like, live reacting and reading Higurashi Tsumihoroboshi. Like, I could not have done this in a way that was more appropriate.
Yeah, like, I've always been of the opinion that when you're dealing with topics that have like a not necessarily clear cut but have like a lot of depth to them, that doing research and scripting it out and pacing it out is very important. But I think that we've inadvertently stumbled upon a balance that I really appreciate on this show, where we have like the veteran and the blind man, because it means that we do have someone to guide us away from the misinformation, someone to steer the ship, but also we still have
you kicking the water or whatever.
as I've said in a couple of discussions in the comments, it's that everyone has a representative. We have the informed people, the uninformed people. And that balance, I think, really has helped not only how I enjoy the show, because I think if we were both coming in informed or both coming in uninformed, it'd just be like, oh, look, we're pointing out the same things. Woo!
Yeah.
But I really like the variety that's built up. And I think that particularly shined for me in editing this arc.
It's good. I'm glad. No, it's good to have an arc where I can just go fucking ham. There'll be a little bit less of that going forward. But you know what? That's fine.
That's all right.
Have my moment.
We get to deal with sensible things that definitely make sense and aren't fantasy.
Oh, God. I don't want... Some people are just... Oh, my God. I've seen so many people who are not happy with one aspect of Higurashi, and I'm excited to see how you react and where you fall. You're probably going to hate it, but we'll see.
I'm very scared.
Oh, I'm ready.
All right. So
what else is on the agenda?
On the agenda, first of all, we have to give Ryukishi 100 points because we misidentified Keiichi's catchphrase.
We didn't.
In Arc 6.
Fucked up. 100 points for you, Ryukishi. Enjoy them.
It's all right. He needs the legwork. He needs the legwork. He's pretty behind at the moment.
How are we doing, roughly?
Okay, last time I touched the editing box, I think it was 920 something to 700 and something.
Oh, yeah, that's not that much of a difference.
He's closed half the gap in that move.
Oh, God.
I think the other thing I did want to bring up before you move on from the comments, going back to Arc 6 Part 3, it was a discussion in the comments about like the comedy of Higurashi, and it was really interesting getting to see some people being like, yeah, the comedy's fucking awful. None of it works. All of these jokes are terrible. Renner's cute mode is lame and doesn't work in the context of the story. And other people being like, it provides a perfect balance.
I don't know about perfect, but it is the balance between the light and the dark that makes Ryukishi's stories unique and interesting to me.
I haven't liked Ben's comment on this thread. Let me just go in and like it
how could you not like my comment? I like all yours, most of them.
I like every comment that I read because it's a way of marking which ones I've seen and not seen.
I like most of them. Look, if you just are not flaming me, I'll like your comment. Get in there now. Get in the comments now. I'll like them for you. I mean, I'm still on the idea that like I enjoy 90% of Higurashi's comedy.
Yeah.
Even if it's silly and awkward, I find that charming.
Well, I think
and my nostalgia definitely helps with that, but
yeah, I think the thing is for me is that the opening of Arc 6 definitely kind of like hammered home how the comedy was supposed to work, where it was meant to be this juxtaposition between the lighthearted moments and the characters taking it seriously. To put it in super short, that I think is meant to make it work. Like obviously that scene, particularly at Angel Mort, where they have the dessert fest and we just go inside Renner's head, is perhaps one of the best examples of how the comedy is clearly intended to be in Higurashi. And I think that was one of the things that kind of frustrated me about this arc, is that it was like how did we get that balance so right at the start, and then, it started to drift, and we also failed to execute it properly before? Because, like, obviously there was all those scenes, particularly back at the festival in the first two arcs, where it's like, oh, look, the club's having fun, everything's going well, and then everything gets spooky and eerie. And it just feels like, tonal whiplash rather than, like, going back to that whole thing of tension and release we were talking about
it's
previously.
Not pacing. It's not good pacing
in
that sense. I feel you. At the same time, I am lenient to Higurashi because it was the first thing he'd ever written.
Yeah.
And because again, the nostalgia is definitely like on my back right now. Like,
and that was also one of the points that was made in this thread, is that someone said that Umineko did the comedy thing better. I disagree.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I think Higurashi's high points and low points are more extreme than Umineko's, but Umineko's is like.
That is
more mediocre.
There's an interesting claim to make. I don't know if I agree that like its high points, like it's definitely rougher all round the Umineko.
No, but like, the strongest points of comedy are the strongest points of comedy and melancholy are used like way more effectively in the best moments and less effectively in the worst moments.
I suppose.
And like I feel like Umineko for me sat somewhere in the middle, and it's interesting to see that like maybe that more reflects that it's less of the fact that the tone is working, but more that it's working for me.
Maybe.
Because like Umineko, I think at some points was too much, some points was too little comedy and balance in there, but was never as extreme as I found Higurashi.
I don't know. I feel like it's just less like thematically important in Umineko.
I suppose.
I mean, the concepts of light and dark and happiness and sadness are obviously important in all of Ryuki's works. But I think that he has it like in mind in Higurashi. It's something that he's specifically calling out as important.
Yeah.
The contrast in our own lives between like events that are terrible, but that changes for the better.
Yeah.
Such as murdering your own friends and then being killed by your friend's sister and then being killed by another one of your friends. And then that helps you grow.
Very straightforward.
But also the happy times that cement those characters, even though they've done bad things to you as your friends. I think that Ryukishi has that in the forefront of his mind as he's writing, and that's why I think it feels stronger. To me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, particularly an example that really, I guess, frustrated me this arc was the unveiling of the reason Keiichi's family moved.
Yeah, you didn't like that?
I don't know, like, I think part of it is that I'd built it up so much in my mind because I noticed it super early on, and I was like, oh, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? What's it going to be? But then...
It's just that he shot a kid in the eye, guys. Like, it's not even that big of a deal.
I mean, it's not, right? It's not a good thing, but it's also not like... It's more of a moral problem than it is like a crime.
I suppose.
He's done a terrible thing and he should feel terrible about it, but the child is demonstrably fine according to the story.
I don't know. I feel like the point of him like can flee in his head to be like this huge big thing. Like, I think that fits perfectly with his attitude to Onikakushi.
Yeah.
I think that sin of him going around shooting little kids in the eyes is fine. Like, I think it's a good... I don't know. Like, what else would it be that he literally killed someone?
And the thing is I can't answer that question because I think, as a couple of comments pointed out, it is very specifically meant to be, as or less significant than Rena's crime of, smashing out the windows and beating up a few of her classmates. Like, if it was actually serious, it wouldn't make sense that they just moved out to the country to deal with it. But I think I'd also just been building it up for so long.
Yeah.
And I think also because, as I mentioned at the time, I did have like a not identical but similar personal experience with some friends in high school regarding the whole paintball thing that I mentioned when we were going through it the first time. Having been there, I think that the main emotion that I saw everyone feel there was sympathy, like, oh, this is terrible that this has happened, for sure. Making sure everyone's all right. So maybe I perceived it through that lens rather than the lens that the story was presenting it through.
Sure, yeah. All, like, pieces of media are going to be different based on your, like, own personal experience, and that's fine.
But, of course, the other thing is that then the tip that came after the reveal kind of made it seem like it was more that his father was interested in moving, and he was like, oh, we need a new life away from the city anyway.
Well, it seemed to work out.
Yeah, it was more like his sin was like a catalyst for it rather than the whole reason, and I do like that aspect of it. I like that it actually gives some agency to his family.
Yeah.
Because particularly, the idea that they're like, oh, this has happened because we haven't been getting along as a family. How do we get along better as a family? Have a vacation, basically. I think that that's a definitely more compelling aspect of it, and I'm less upset about that whole angle. In fact, I'd even say I'm just not frustrated with it anymore.
I'm glad. I'm glad you like it.
Like it is it's too strong of a term. Too strong of a term.
I like it.
But I think that on reflection, it works better than my initial impression because I just probably overhyped it.
Sure. I mean, that's something that anyone could fall victim to.
Yeah.
Overhyping literally everything.
Are you accusing me of not being perfect?
I would never do that. Obviously, flawless. You have all the points.
Thank you.
I can do nothing to stop you. Yeah.
Death of the Reader, Sunday nights, 9 p.m.
Goddamn.
Who's in lead with the points? Oh, that's right. It's me.
I'm coming up behind there. We're getting there.
Yeah, you are behind. Out of the 2 people on the show, you are...
Out of the three people, I'm
second.
second.
Sorry, that's right. You're second out of the 3.
Thank you. Shout out to Sean Britton.
Your strike... In fact, if we're going by strike rate, Sean Britton is technically doing better than the both of us.
What? Oh, you're right, because he's only been on one show.
Yeah.
He's technically winning on Death of the Reader.
Oh, my goodness.
You should just take over.
We need to just kill Sean.
Whoa! Supplant him. Can we Weekend and Bernie's that shit? Can we, like, become Sean?
Yeah, that's going to go real well for us. All right. Let's jump over. Let's do everyone's favorite part. We're going Umineko spoilers.
Umineko spoilers?
Yes, unless you have anything else to cover. In 3, 2, 1. Umineko spoilers. Full Umineko spoilers. We're not hiding anything. This is about to get ridiculous.
Okay, sure. Get out of here, you nerds.
So,
you want to talk about Kinzo?
I want to talk about how Rena is a Kinzo XB.
Yeah, it's the other way around. But yeah, I mean...
No, but I did it in the other order, and thus my perspective on the world
Your perspective is subjective and true at the same time. Yeah, you're right. Like, the whole idea of, like, throwing everything to fate. I mean, that said, I don't think that, like... I don't know. I feel like there are other characters... Like, Sayo throws everything to fate. Full spoilers, guys. Get out of here. If you don't know who Sayo is...
Who?
Leave now. Or, I suppose, Yasu. Either one. Like, what are you doing?
I'm just laughing.
Point is...
This is a dumb jerk.
I mean, yeah, it's like... This is something that Ryukashi is, like, really interested in. The idea of, like, throwing yourself wholly into something and leaving up to fate. Like, the whole concept of fate is something that he's obsessed with.
Yeah.
Fate and sins and determination and miracles and all that shit. I mean, like,
the whole setup with the school is literally just the same as the time bomb in Umineko. It's just that it's, you know, more sudden and upfront.
Yeah.
And
everyone knows about it.
Yeah.
For once.
And it was so weird to me reading that whole sequence because I was like, I've noticed a few times that Ryukashi has... you know, reuse thematics. We spoke about on a previous recap the whole thing of like Shion and, you know, Sayo or whatever. From
Shion and Sayo? I think you mean Trion and Sayo.
Anyway.
Obviously.
And like all of the parallels there, and we've spoken about how the characters have very similar motivations, but the one thing that really surprised me about the whole time bomb thing is it's like, so Ryukashi is basically told the same story with a different angle of attack and a different lens.
Yeah.
Like probably 3 times over now with Kikonia.
I was going to say.
And it's so weird because if I was creating something and it was so like viscerally similar to the things I'd done before, I wouldn't bother.
Sure.
Like, it is a fascinating artistic intent for Ryukashi to come in and deliver the same moral lessons, the same character beats, the same interpretations of the world in, you know, very slightly tweaked ways that in broad strokes feel so humongously different.
Yeah. He's very good at framing things.
He's a mad genius.
He is.
I've kind of been saying it not ironically, but semi-sarcastically up until this point, but I think Arc 6 may have tipped me over the edge. Like, I even reading Kikonia now, you know, no spoilers on Kikonia here, but even the things that are similar, I'm like, what are we doing? Is this just the same thing again?
Yeah.
Is he making fun of the fact that he's done it before? Is he actually doing it again? I don't know.
Is he just writing the same story 5 or 6 times?
Dude, I would not be surprised at all if it's just the same. If we get to the end of Higurashi and Kikonia and it's just the same as the end of Umineko in broad strokes, like, what is going on with this man? How does this work? How does he do this?
He's a very compelling writer, to put it simply. I don't know, like, his setup seems so completely different, but he always ends up being like, this is the power of will, and this is how we're going to smash fate, and this is, like, there's all this stuff, all these, like, themes that he's throwing together. And you're right, like, clocks are cool, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we love him. I don't know, like, Ryukashi is at the same time, like, an incredibly outside-of-the-box, like, writer, and I really love everything he does, but he is predictable to some extent.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I keep coming back to him, you know? Like Like, especially with Arc 6, watching that for the first time. Like, I know that when I watched it, I wasn't sure if everyone was going to live or not. Whereas if I had read Umineko, like, you know, I might have been swayed to think, oh, well, they're probably going to live. It's probably going to be fine. Like, 'cause that's what people do. They like survive crazy shit in Umineko. They get
or don't,
boats.
as the case may be.
Some of them don't, but not the important characters. Let's be real.
And then 7 years down the line, people are still arguing whether your tall, long-haired, tall, long, black-haired woman is the same as your golden-haired, complicated character.
Yeah, it's a trick of the light, guys. You got to waggle the picture back and forth. Somebody make that, please. Somebody make that.
It's just one of those like fucking 3D tiles. You turn it the right way.
I was thinking of the dress actually. I was thinking of the dress that like looks either purple or yellow. Or whatever. Anyway, but yeah, no, you're right. Like,
and it's so weird to me, the idea that like, you know, obviously to some extent you could argue that that's what When They Cry is. It's like this is Ryukishi exploring these things, and that's what the When They Cry series means to him. But then why make it a series?
Because it's fun. I don't know.
But I just don't get it. Like, I feel like, you know, my experience from telling stories doesn't exclusively, but I think most extensively comes from role-playing games and getting to explore characters. And I so often find that, you know, once I've played out a character idea, I'm like, this is how I've done this character idea.
Yep, then you move on.
And yeah, I move on. You know, sometimes I critique it. Sometimes I'll bring it back in a different way, like down the line in a different character. But I'd never bring it back in its whole so explicitly in the same way that Ryukishi does. And some part of me is like, I can't believe Ryukishi is so limited of an author that he has to keep using the same themes over and over again. Can't he come up with something new? But I've not once felt like I'm reading the same story.
Yeah.
Until we got to that very explicit comparison in Arc 6.
Let me bring you back around to the start of this entire discussion.
Yes.
So my playwright led me to a love of theater, and that led me to a love of role playing, which led me to you, which is, you know, I love a little circle life. But let me tell you, it's the circle of theater done. But like, when I make a character for role playing, I will often try to make characters who are different to like the core concept of like a tragic character who seems like they're okay, but they're not fine and nobody believes that they're fine. But I tend to find them to be less compelling when I play those characters. I don't feel like I can play them for as long. The characters that I enjoy playing the most and that I keep coming back to are typically the ones that follow that like basic formula of like a character who is not like, doesn't have a lot of power, and they have a tragic backstory, and maybe they're marginalized, maybe they're a victim of a curse or a prophecy or something, and the whole thing is about breaking out of that circumstance, usually by toppling the establishment.
Yeah.
Because that's just the kind of character that I like playing. And I will play characters outside of that or in variations of that, but those characters I never find as interesting. And I'll just, I don't know. I always come back to the same type of character over and over again. And it's because I like playing that character, and I feel like that's Ryukishi, right? Like he enjoys writing stories that are about fate.
Yeah.
So he's going to keep writing those stories, and people seem to enjoy them. So why stop, I guess?
Fair
I don't
point.
know. Like, I don't think it's that complicated. Like, he's not being cynical either.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this also goes back to, as we've spoken about 1,001 times on this show, the idea that this isn't the headspace I operate in.
Sure.
Like, I cannot relate to these characters, but I can still appreciate the way that the story is done. And I guess that's the same with how Ryukishi treats writing stories in general. That, like, I could not write a franchise like this with the same concepts done in different ways over and over again, and I think do it as effectively as he has.
Yeah, for sure.
So
them permutations.
It's fascinating getting to experience it.
It's great. No, I love it. Bless Lord Ryukishi.
Yes.
May he deliver us from terrible visual novels.
All right, last thing.
What's the last thing? I'm scared.
Let's just quickly touch on Burn again.
Do we have to?
Just briefly. Just briefly.
What do you need to know about Burn?
Well,
She's not even in Higurashi.
Obviously we had the discussion at the end in the first recap talking about how, I know what Rika's whole line is through this story to some extent.
Sure.
Because of the way that Burn Castle is presented in Umineko.
Sure.
And I think there was a comment thread. I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, and I didn't save it. So You know who you are, and thank you dearly.
It's probably Funk. But yeah, let's
probably
go.
Funk.
Love you, Funk.
But the whole idea that, like, how could I have come into the story knowing that, you know, that line was going to be the same? Sure. That the Rika looking character was actually going to the Burncastle looking character was actually going to be the same.
Was this a conversation about my voice decisions? Was that line?
I think it was that one. Yeah,
they were like, I mean, it's fine. Like, I understand why they made this comment, but basically saying that I should not be using such a specific voice. I mean, even though it was spoiler section, but like, I should not be using the Burn voice for like Rika's mature voice because that gives too much away. Let me tell you that we were reading through Umineko. We were in like, I want to say Arc 4, Arc 5 maybe.
Yeah.
And I posted a picture of the club games in our like Discord server that we join in, and you were like, I recognize a character in there. And I was like, no, you don't. Like, you've been pinged on this line between Rika and Burn since halfway through Umineko even.
Well, I mean, also like in Umineko, they're like, oh yes, in another world, things were like this for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty upfront about it. And obviously there was some room that it could have just been like a loose connection that was a throwback for the fans. But
yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about that, I think, specifically when we get to the end. But yeah.
But I think the thing that interested me there was the idea that, like, obviously I've come in with a very different perspective on the story, both, you know, for who I am, but also the way that I approach the story in terms of tackling the puzzles. And does us presenting Rika using the Burncastle voice and the spooky old voice give away too much for someone who's watching the series through the first time? And it's like, maybe, but at the same time, it's like,
only a spoiler if you've seen our other playthrough.
Well, it's only a spoiler if you've seen other playthrough, and also, like, as with anything, and I've always been of the opinion that for most media, if not all media, if a story can't stand up to spoilers, it's probably not worth covering in the first place. Sure. Because, you know, that kind of spoiler where it's like, it's a voice, it's a detail.
Yeah.
You don't have to interpret it in the way that is correct.
Yep.
That's the whole way that mystery stories work, is that you can't guess exactly where it's going unless you fit multiple pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, you need to interpret the details for yourself at the end of the day. And yeah, I mean, I picked that voice partly because I couldn't think of a better voice, and also because it's a fun voice.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of like a more appropriate voice. I figured like a minor spoiler that you've probably already figured out is like, I don't know. To me, that's what a lot of this playthrough is, and this is a lot of what happens in my head. This is the stuff that I have to deal with, guys. Well, he's off theorizing and playing a fair game with a creator who set up a puzzle for him. I had to solve the entire unintended puzzle of like, who's playing who? What voices do we use? Does this voice give away too much of this character? Like,
yeah,
that's always the trick. I mean, this goes all the way back to Umineko when I was like picking my Beatrice voice and like trying to portray her accurately. Like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Without giving away her like secrets. It's
Goodness.
good fun. It's fun though. It's fun. We enjoy it.
I'm really excited to meet Rika's grandfather, or whoever is that grumpy old voice that you've been doing in those tips was. What?
Rika's grandfather.
Yeah.
Who could that be? Ah, yes. Rika's grandfather. Just hanging out. Not doing anything suspicious. How indeed.
All right.
It's terrifying. Look forward to the next arc.
We've already said it in the comments, which means this isn't huge news. But hey, Monday, it's the anime.
Yeah, we're watching the anime, guys.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to enjoy Studio Dean's finest work yet.
Finest work.
Top tier work.
Nothing is wrong with it whatsoever. We have no complaints.
On the plus side, we're listening to the Japanese voices, so we can't...
Is that the plus side?
Well, it means we can't... I mean, have you heard the English dub? It is so bad. It may be the worst dub I've ever heard in my life. I cannot listen to the whole thing. It's terrible.
I cannot comment for certain. But yeah. If you didn't see the comment that I made previously, we are basically going to be uploading a condensed version of our thoughts. I don't know how long it's going to be. That's just going to be like, here are the highlights of our reactions and discussions from the episode. And then unlisted on the channel is going to be a playlist linked in the descriptions of the anime videos with our full commentary track that you can put on. I'll leave like a tiny section of pixels uncovered so that you can still kind of sync it up loosely.
Perfect.
And watch it through and experience us bullying the story the whole time.
It's going to be great.
Woo!
Have fun, guys.
Next time.